Today we're going to be going over one of the most important tips to save you a ton of time, money, and resources in Diablo 4. This is going to be the most efficient way to be able to upgrade all of your equipment for your character, and there's actually a lot of tricks that we can do to more efficiently upgrade and know when to upgrade specific types of equipment. I wasted a ton of time upgrading things the wrong way, and it took me a while to realize that there's actually kind of a secret mechanic to upgrading your equipment. And we're going to be going over that. We're going to be going over pretty much everything you need to know, when to upgrade your equipment, how to enchant your equipment, and what you should be enchanting and all of that stuff, because there's a lot of ways you can waste a ton of resources. And quite frankly, when you're trying to min-max, things get insanely expensive. So the first thing we need to go over is how to properly upgrade your items and what items you actually should be upgrading and enchanting. We've got a really good example right here. We've got a 717 item power weapon here. And then we have a 751 item power weapon. Now, the interesting thing is there's actually breaking points for weapons where if they hit a certain power level, they're going to hit a different level of stats that you can get on them. But our Agony Executioner can get all the way up to 23.5 bonus to damage to close enemies. And that's because this weapon is on the next tier of stats. There's a total of 6 different stat levels in the game. It goes from level 1 being 1 to 149 item level, and then you break into tier 2 at 150 all the way up to 339. Then tier 3 starts at 340 and goes up to 459. Then it goes from 460 to 624, then 625 to 724, and the final tier being tier 6 is the breaking point at 725. Now this is where things get important. If you have a weapon or any piece of armor that's near a breaking point, this is the item that you actually want to spend resources on upgrading and enchanting to be able to help break your character into the next tier of stats. And you can actually get significant damage increases and stat increases from doing this. There's a couple reasons why this is incredibly important. We're going to go over that right now. If you have an item that's not near a breaking point, you don't want to waste resources upgrading it to level 5. Right now, the highest we could get is just below the breaking point of 725 on this helmet. There's really no reason to spend the resources on 4 and 5 unless you really just haven't gotten better rolls on that helmet. You just want to max it out as much as you can until you do get something above that breaking point. Now, once you do hit that breaking point, say you have an item above level 725 or whatever breaking point you're trying to pass, no matter how much higher currently in the game, the stat bonuses that you get, and that's talking about the things like lucky hit, vulnerable damage, damage to close enemies, and damage over time, they will have a set maximum that you can get to. The only thing you're going to get from higher item level is increased damage per second, or if it's armor, increased armor. And there's a couple tricks you can use to really take advantage of this. So for my Barbarian, for instance, we're able to equip 4 different weapons, but only the weapon you're using for skills will be using the damage per second that is on that weapon. So right now we have a weapon here that's 2099 damage per second, and if we use Whirlwind or whatever skill it is and we're using this specific weapon, it'll only use that damage per second. So what we can do is, while we have weapons here that are high item levels with high damage per second, these don't matter unless they're being used, and this goes for every other class in the game as well. Now, while the damage per second on these weapons don't matter, the bonus stats that you get on them absolutely matter, as well as the legendary aspect. Because no matter what weapon you're using, all of these bonus stats will carry over to that main weapon that you are using, just not the damage per second. So this is where things get interesting and where we can really power up our character, whether you're just trying to min-max or if you're just trying to get through the game and break your character into higher stats and more power. So we're going to go through my entire upgrading process, and this is what you should be focusing on as you progress your character. So we're going to go over a couple different upgrading examples, and there's actually a way you can get even more abilities. Like if we look at our hands right here, it only shows that we can get 2 ranks of Whirlwind, but we can actually get 3 when we break it to the next item level. We're going to start with upgrading and enchanting our weapons. And it's really important that when you're trying to min-max or really just get the most out of anything, it's almost always more efficient to find a really good base rare item, enchant and upgrade that, and then upgrade it to legendary. Because quite frankly, most legendary drops aren't very good. So we've got 2 different weapons here, and we're just going to use these as an example. We've got the Mangled Lash, which is at 717 item power, just below the 725 breaking point. And then we've got the Agony Executioner with 751 item power. Now, the Agony Executioner has 2 skills on it that we don't want, whereas the Mangled Flash has only 1 skill that we don't want. And this is the one we're going to try and enchant and replace. So let's go over to the enchanting area. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the enchantment here, and we're going to put our item level 717 in here. And we're going to replace ultimate skill damage. I'm really hoping for vulnerability, so let's go ahead and do that. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you're going to need Forgotten Souls for this, which you can get from the Hell Tide. If you just travel around, open chests, do events and things like that, you're going to get plenty of these Forgotten Souls. It only costs 1, so it's not bad. So let's see what we get here. We've got damage over time, 48 strength. I'll take 48 strength for now. I really want vulnerability on here, but it's going to get more and more expensive each time. I'll do it once more for an example. 41 strength, so that's even worse. But that's okay. We'll leave the strength on here for now. I'm so tempted to keep going with it, but this is actually not a weapon that I'm going to be using. But you can see that you basically want to roll for your stats before you upgrade it to legendary. Because once you upgrade it to legendary, I'll show you, it becomes unbelievably expensive. So if we put this weapon in here, it's going to take 1 Forgotten Soul, 1 Fiend Rose, a bunch of Veiled Crystals, and 1.3 million gold. Just don't do it that way. I promise you. Try and min-max your rares. Only do it on legendary if you absolutely need to. We actually rolled really good on that strength stat, so I'm not too disappointed on that, but we're still not through the breaking point. So now what we need to do is we're going to head over to the blacksmith to be able to upgrade this item. Now, something interesting can happen when we do get through the breaking point. So let's go ahead and go through this. Let's upgrade this particular weapon. If we upgrade it once, it's going to take us to just below the breaking point. So let's do that. But now if we upgrade it again, we're going to get past 725. And you're going to notice there's a massive jump in our stats. We're going from getting like +2 or 3 to now we're getting +11, +9, +9, and +8. That's because we're jumping up to the next tier. But what's also interesting is when you break an item through the power level, you're also going to be re-rolling the stats. Now, if we look at these weapons, there's something interesting here. So our damage to close enemies goes from 12.7 to 8.2. So when you do break an item level through, the lowest amount of stats are just below the maximum that you could roll anyways. So it's really not a big deal. So we might get from going from like a mid-range damage to close enemies roll to the very bottom of the next tier. But even the very bottom is going to be higher than what you had before. Most likely. But if you roll really, really bad on this upgrade, you could actually roll lower stats. But let's go ahead and upgrade this now. So now we're all the way up to 62 strength on this weapon. And you'll notice that now our damage to close enemies has upgraded to the breakthrough stats of maxing out at 28.2. Now it shows higher because we're also upgrading the weapon at the same time, so we're getting more of a bonus on top of our bonus. But we did re-roll a mid-range stat on here. We could have maxed out at 28.2, but we didn't. Critical strike damage is pretty good, and damage while berserking is now closer to the high end rather than the low end. So when you break an item through that power level, you can't actually get lower stats, but you can get a lower roll within the range. So let's look at this weapon, for instance. On the damage to close enemies at the lower item power level, it maxes at 16.5, but the next breakthrough point starts at 16.5. So what's interesting is when you re-roll the stats, when you break through the item power level, you're going to re-roll within the next range. So if you upgrade this item and you had already the max roll, it does not guarantee you a max roll once you break through the item power level, which is a little unfortunate. That would have been nice. At worst, you're going to have the lowest end, which is equivalent to the same highest end at the lower power level. But at best, you could roll significantly higher, getting a much larger boost in stats. Now let's go over this little hidden feature of upgrading your abilities by getting through that breakout point. We're at 704 item power on this right now, and we can get a max 2 ranks of Whirlwind or 2 ranks of Upheaval. But if we go ahead and upgrade it to the breaking points, we're actually going to have to upgrade it all the way to 5 to do this. So let's just upgrade, upgrade, upgrade. And you'll notice that once we go through 4 and then on 5, we actually get 4 ranks of Whirlwind if we upgrade it to 5 right now, which is huge. 3 ranks of Upheaval. We're actually going to be lowering our attack speed on here for some reason, but that roll for Whirlwind is really, really good. So I actually really like this because I can roll out of Upheaval or attack speed and see if I can get something significantly better. So with our Whirlwind at just 5 out of 5 ranks, we're getting anywhere from 1684 to 2059. With these bonus 4 ranks on here, our very lowest damage is 2174, all the way up to 2657. This is actually a 29% damage increase just by getting these ranks. And that is a static all the time damage increase. That's huge. And there's many classes that can take advantage of this. Some of you out there might be thinking, well, just reassign those points somewhere else to get more damage. I've already maxed out my board of everything that I can really increase my damage on, so I'm not going to do that, and I really want to upgrade Whirlwind. It might be different for other classes, but it's an amazing way to really min-max your build. Now I've gone ahead and re-rolled the stats on here. So now we have 4 ranks of whirlwind, 3 ranks of upheaval, blech. And then I almost got a perfect roll on our critical strike chance. So this is an amazing pair of gloves for me right now. I've increased my whirlwind damage by 29%. I now have an even higher chance to crit. So now I want to turn this into a legendary. By placing an aspect on it. I'm running a bit of a stun build right now, so what I'm going to put on these gloves is I'm going to extract this. Distant enemies have an 8% chance to be stunned for 2 seconds, and I deal 40% more increased damage to stunned enemies, and I stun enemies a lot. So we're going to extract this from here, and that's a perfect roll on this as well. So these gloves are going to be really good for me for a very long time. So now we're going to put the gloves in here. We're going to find that new aspect that we did, and then all we would need to do is apply this aspect onto the gloves. So that's pretty much all you need to know about upgrading your equipment. I really hope this video helped you out. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you all in the next one.